From March 31st to April 2nd, Nintendo has challenged all Splatoon players to choose a team between Sasquatch, Loch Ness Monsters, and aliens to see who's going to reign supreme in this upcoming Splatfest. Now, if you guys don't know what the hell I'm talking about Splatoon 3. Splatoon 3 is a game that I picked up when it dropped last year, and I was definitely very excited and very hyped for it. I immediately was playing it non-stop, and I could not put it down. Since then, I've definitely fell off of it, like a lot of people I've noticed have. There's definitely a lot less conversation about the game, and even during matchmaking, I felt like it was taking a lot longer in comparison to when I had picked up the game earlier. With that being said, I thought this would be a great time to get back into Splatoon 3 and see if it's just as fun as I remembered, or if it was definitely just the hype of the moment. Alright, with all that said, do me a favor, you guys, like the video. If you like the video, consider subscribing, as it does definitely help me out tons. My name is Christian, and do me a favor, you guys, ignore some of the gameplay or be a little bit nice to me, because I was just trying to remember how to play the game, as it's been a cool minute since I've played. And this is, if you guys haven't played Splatoon, it is a very unique and interesting shooter, and it plays nothing like your Call of Duties or your Apex. It is a completely different beast, and I was just trying to get a hang of it. That way I can prepare myself for this upcoming Splatfest. With that being said, is Splatoon 3 still good? Can you still pick it up? And is it okay to hop into it right now? Let's get into it. Alright, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with the franchise that is Splatoon, Splatoon is Nintendo's very quirky, unique take on the shooter genre, where most games it takes place in like a war zone and battlefields, etc., etc. Splatoon takes place in Splatsville area, so you play as the Squid Kids and you kind of paintball each other down. So the goal of most shooter games is to eliminate the enemy teams and to rack up as many kills as possible. In Splatoon, it's a little bit different, as yeah, you can splat the enemies and you can get them in out of action for a little bit, but that doesn't really gain you any points. It just gives you more of an advantage. But the point system is actually based off how much of the map that you actually paint. That was kind of the early intrigue that I found when I was getting into the game, is that I found trying to keep up with every Call of Duty player or Apex player and trying to rack up my KD was just becoming way too difficult, and I didn't have the time of day to keep up with some of these people that were putting in 200, 300 hours into a game, and I could only match like 60 hours max. What Splatoon, the interest to me was that it wasn't really about your KD or anything. It was mainly just about working as a unit and covering more of the floor than your enemies are. But I quickly found out that this game has its own meta and its own different things that add difficulty to the game, and that makes this its own very unique form of sweaty. So I haven't really been playing this game for the last like 5 months, and I know there's been a lot of updates and changes to the meta of the game. So trying to familiarize myself with some of the newer maps, some of the new meta and weapons of the game was definitely very difficult, especially when I started noticing that all the people that I was playing with against were pretty much the same people back to back, and they were very knowledgeable on the weapon choices and meta and maps. So that was kind of my first early struggle. But as I started playing the game, I realized that a lot of it is very unique to the gameplay. So depending on the type of game you're playing, depending on the type of weapons the other team have, is ever going to determine how I'm going to be playing the game. The best thing that I could recommend to you, if you're either returning to Splatoon or if you're a first time player of Splatoon, is kind of wait back and watch as everyone battle each other from a distance safely, and you will kind of see and pick up on a lot of their movements and things that are going to be working differently. For example, if you just run in and rush in, you're going to get killed, you're going to keep getting splatted, and you're not going to really be having that much fun. But if you kind of stay back and observe your enemies, observe your teammates, you're going to kind of see what everyone's goal and how you should kind of navigate this specific scenario. So for example, one of the match types is called Splat Zone, and in Splat Zone, there's a specific square that you want to dominate. So you want to have that specific square your color for an X amount of time, and pretty much whoever holds it the longest is going to end up winning the game. Once I started playing the game, I would always just kind of rush into the Splat Zone and kind of just start spraying everywhere randomly in hopes of having more paint on the floor than anybody. But every time I would get into the Splat Zone, there would be someone with an ink brush who would splat me away immediately, or someone at a distance with a sniper that'll be waiting for someone to just run in there so they could snipe them. So I started quickly learning that I would have to find a different point of view or like a different elevation so I could watch the splat zone and see what the enemy players have and how they're moving, and how they're running and how my teammates are running into the map. If I notice all my teammates are running into the splat zone, I'm probably going to keep a farther distance. That way we don't all die together, and that way that at least one of us is on the field at one time at all times. Because if you guys are all dead, or if you have multiple people dead at the same time, you're definitely at a huge disadvantage, and it's going to give the enemy team a good opportunity to run in and hold the splat zone longer. Another thing too that I picked up on that was really helping me out a lot is that once you started owning the splat zone and once you were dominating the splat zone, don't be afraid to start pushing in on the enemies. Be aggressive. If you already know that you have your splat zone covered, start pushing in on them so they can feel more pressured and that they have to kind of fight their way out immediately from launching into the map. So doing that definitely kept them on their toes and made sure that we not only protected our splat zone, but that they were more concerned about staying alive than they were about actually getting into the splat zone. One thing that really sucks for anyone who's familiar with Nintendo's online, they don't have any kind of in-game voice chat options or any real way of communicating with people. Like, something that bothers me is that you can't even really ping locations. You can just say like this way or booyah. And if they at least just added like an option to ping things, I feel like that would be more helpful, especially someone who did play a lot of Call of Duty. I feel like that's kind of a universal way in first-person shooters or just the shooters genre in general of kind of like telling people where you're going or where we should be going as a unit. And I feel like without that, or without any really strong way of communicating with people, it is really tricky to kind of find people that you're working in sync with. And when a game like Splatoon, where it's only 4 people versus 4 people and is very team focused, you can't really expect one person to carry the team. So you definitely really have to find a way to work together and kind of communicate to each other without actually communicating to each other. So I do highly recommend that if you're going to be getting into Splatoon, try to find a group of people to also get in there with you. That way it'll be easier for you guys to communicate via Discord, etc. Or go online and try to reach out to some people and see if you can pretty much just kind of foster a group that you can play Splatoon with. Because definitely playing this together is a lot more fun than playing by yourselves with a bunch of kind of randos. Unfortunately for me, it was hard to find 3 other people that I knew to get into this game with me, as every time I try to recommend someone to play Splatoon, they look at it and they are immediately turned off, or they think it's just like a really cutesy game. They can't see that it could be a very sweaty game. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to find people in IRL that I could actually be playing with. I did, however, figure out that the people that I kept running into and kept playing with were very knowledgeable in the game, and because we all just kind of end up in the same maps together all the time and in the same games all the time, we did end up working really, really well together, and we kind of didn't really need to communicate to each other. We were kind of just like, we knew what each person was doing, and we kind of picked up on each other really, really fast. And I think that is a true testament to the kind of game design and game philosophy that Nintendo built in this game. Something that I feel Nintendo does really well, and it is very highlighted in this game, is the way that they're able to explain how the game works in a very simple and to the straight point. So, for example, in the tower control games, where your goal is to own a tower and to move it from checkpoint to checkpoint until you reach the other enemy side, it doesn't really give you a lot of instructions on the game. It's just straight up, take the tower. You walk into the middle and you see the tower. Everyone knows they're trying to get this tower, so as a team, you kind of figure things out without really saying much, just because it is a very simple idea. And as you run a couple maps, you'll definitely figure out something that works really well. And it definitely becomes really fun as the tower changes elevations and kind of gets closer more into the enemy territories and becomes a lot harder to push through. But because you're working in smaller groups, it is easier to figure out what everyone's doing and what the enemies are doing. So after a couple runs of playing the game, you'll definitely figure out where you need to be and your part to play in the team. So if you've never played Splatoon before, or it's been a minute and you've been considering hopping back into it, I could definitely recommend that. Right now, currently, Splatoon is still really fun. Even though it's been a minute and even though I haven't really been playing a little bit, it is very intuitive, and I definitely had just having such a blast. I'm looking forward to the Splatfest coming up, and I went with Team Alien. With all that being said, those are my final thoughts on Splatoon 3 currently. Let me know down below if you guys are playing Splatoon 3, if you're looking forward to this Splatfest, or if it's going to be your first time hopping in. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.